What is up, everyone? Chris Manning here. That's Evan Dammarell. We're going to talk all about the Caris LeVert trade today on a live episode of Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Again, all about the Caris LeVert trade, which happened last night. We're just able to get to recording now. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Before we get into today's show in full, I want to thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen. Maybe not today because we're coming a little bit too, but we want to thank you for listening to us every day. And remember, we are free and available on all platforms.
We have a loyal fan base. They waited all day for us to post an episode, and we are their first listen, right?
Sure. Okay, Evan. Caris
Everyone's
LeVert,
silently nodding their head in agreement as they listen.
Yeah. They're getting scolded by their math teacher right now for just passively doing the homework. Evan, the Cavs have acquired Caris LeVert. There's like a lot of stuff that we could talk. Like, we're not even on this show because of the LeVert trade, because of the Pacers game. We're not even going to touch on the Hornets game from Friday, which was like kind of wild, and like maybe we'll talk about for Tuesday show a little bit because was just bonkers, and perhaps we need to circle back to that one at some point in some way because it was just again insane and it had playoff implications and everything. But the big news here, obviously, is that Caris LeVert is a Cleveland Cavalier. He is now coming into Cleveland in exchange for Ricky Rubio's expiring contract, the second-round pick via the Rockets that the Cavs have, another second-round pick in a future draft, and then the Cavs are getting a second-round pick back and getting, obviously, Caris LeVert back. Evan, this and a lot of protected first. So, Evan, I want to start here. This price, LeVert in exchange for in a pick, a pick that may not matter, but at least a nominal pick in exchange for Rubio or protected first 2 seconds. What do you make of the price for what LeVert will bring the Cavs?
I think a lot of people are going to try and use the Norman Powell trade to the Clippers as like a baseline for this trade. I think that was more of a salary dump on Portland's part onto Los Angeles. They did get Norman Powell for the troubles, but the Clippers are also like so above the luxury tax. I think this is a smart trade for Cleveland because it keeps them within that luxury tax threshold that they're trying to avoid.
They saved $300,000 for going over the tax, and I
think they're $3.4 million under the line now. Then.
Yeah, roughly. I think
Okay.
I think the thing to note there is that I think I am of the opinion that I think like rich people can probably like it is like the thing where it's like I think like what Steve Ballmer is doing should be more normal among like these billionaire owners, but he's also one of the richest people in the world. The Cavs are also owned by one of the richest men in the world, so like they could probably afford to do luxury tax. But there's
Steve
also
Ballmer.
But there's also but like few people are as rich as Steve Ballmer.
I said as sweaty as Steve Ballmer.
Does he dance like Steve Ballmer?
Have you seen the Microsoft with developers thing?
Yeah, I also sent you a video of Steve Ballmer dancing last week.
I probably didn't respond.
Yeah, you didn't respond because this isn't Chris's trolling you face, and you just weren't having it. But like Ballmer is willing to spend lots of money in a way that like few owners are in eating luxury tax stuff. But like that certainly makes these two things different.
Yeah. That's what I was kind of getting at is like Steve Ballmer is very wealthy, and I think he can more than okay foot the bill on what the Clippers are trying to do. Plus, they have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on in the wings, so like they're a contending team. There's a reason why they're paying the tax as well, but for the Cavs to stay below that luxury tax threshold, which I think was key because Martin Rickman said go ahead. I agree with him. You agree with him. Like, just who cares how much Dan Gilbert has to spend on this team? But it's also smart team building as well, not to go above the luxury tax threshold. But in terms of prices paid, friend of the program, Trevor Magnotti, calls it a bit of a fallacy where a late of the first round or the second round pick via the Houston Rockets could be viewed as a late first round pick. There are obviously some monumental monetary differences between the two, but I think it was a fair trade. I think this is, you and Tony East called it more or less a couple days ago. And
that's right. That's freaking right, baby. Look at me. Nostra Chris over here. I wore the same hat that I did.
Yeah, there you go. But like, it's been widely reported. Woj reported it. You've heard it. I've heard it. Like, the Pacers were trying to pry like Isaac Okoro from the Cavs for Caris LeVert, and the Cavs just weren't going to budge. And I think this was the best the Pacers were going to get because they went in with the mindset of 2 first-round picks or a first-round pick and a young player.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the Houston second could be perceived as like a 31, 32, 33 overall pick. So I guess you could technically call that a late first. Again, different contract implications, but the Cavs got their guy in the end, and I think that's just all that really matters because this was like one of the worst kept secrets up to the trade deadline. Is like Cleveland was continuously linked to Caris LeVert, and there's a lot of fire behind that smoke.
Yeah, I think ultimately the price is fair, and I think the fit and sort of in conjunction, it makes some sense. Like it is not like an A plus fit, or maybe even like an A fit, just because I think LeVert is not a shooter, like a plus shooter, like a 33% 3-point shooter. This is not, and not a guy that's like a better like off ball shooter. Like what he is on offense will provide, I think, some needed pick and roll. I would expect, just based on the structure of what the Cavs do, perhaps he will freelance less, or at least kind of more in ways that are sort of maybe like, I think you're trying to hope to shift what he's kind of been in the Indiana this year a little bit more towards kind of playing within the infrastructure the Cavs do have. I will be curious to see, how aggressively Bickerstaff goes about staggering him and Garland. I think that's kind of the key to this. I think if you're looking at LeVert as a way to not just take some pressure off of Daryl and Darius, but really can prop up some of the lineups that don't have Darius in them. Like I would expect a lot of, if like Allen plus Love, and then either one of Allen or Mobley is like, I think like a way to kind of look at how you're going to see Caris LeVert used. And then it's like Jetty Osman is probably the fourth guy there if you're going more bench heavy. And then, whether it's, Markkanen or Okoro, whomever it ends up being, like there's going to be some wiggle room there. And look, I think the price is ultimately like it's fine. Like it is maybe like, is 2 second round picks, like maybe like a tad. Okay, but like, it's a future second round pick. That pick, the hit rates in those are low. Like this is a guy who feels going to help you now. There's been kind of leakage already that they want to maybe look at extending him to an extension. If you believe this is like a guy, and again, we need to see it. Like we need to kind of see how he's going to look the next end of the stretch of the season and whatnot. If you think this is a guy that you want to continue to build with and whatever this team is going to look like beyond this season, then this price makes more sense. And I think the fact that they still have that Spurs second round pick, and at least as of right now, barring another trade where they use a pick in this upcoming draft, they have that other second round pick coming in, I believe, via the Heat. They have at least some, they have the ability to still go out and get pretty cost effective second round flyers if they want to reinforce into the roster. So it's not like their avenues of adding some younger cost effective talent are out the window. They still have, like, maybe they're obviously their best 2 picks are now off the window. At least as we understand the roster now, but like they still have guys, and I think you'll see like LeVert is going to run a ton of pick and roll. I think he's going to run a lot of ISO. I think he's going to be a guy that gets to the rim, and how that looks amid the Cavs spacing will be interesting. But he's going to be a guy that's put rim pressure on and open up some shots for guys. And I think I think Rondo talked about in terms of there being lob threats for him that he hasn't had in quite a while. Like I think these are interesting little wrinkles, and it's not going to be I think a right away kind of perfect fit. I think the deadline, I think one of the things we'll get to after the break is just like the starting lineup is not going to necessarily be what I think it could be once we see Lowry Markkanen come back. I think we're going to see this stretch where, like, assuming he's not back like Wednesday, which I don't think is going to be the case, it would seem Isaac Okoro is going to get a chance to maybe solidify himself along. If the games go well and everything looks good, like maybe he settles in as a starter. I tend to think that Markkanen is a little bit of a better fit just because of the shooting you're going to kind of need. But there's a lot of different ways this could go, and I think this is like a. If I was going to like grade this, Evan, I think it's like a B plus. I don't think this is like an A.
I'll give it a B minus.
I think B plus just because like I think it provides such a clear need right now, and it's not like. You've not so damaged your future flexibility, right? Like like, look, if this goes sideways for whatever reason, there's a ton of like stackable contracts that are expiring at the end of this. Kevin Love, Caris LeVert, I mean, Jetty Osman because of the non-guarantee. Like, you have these like flippable contracts if you need to kind of go push some other chips in another direction at the end of the season. But I like this on paper. But Evan, is there a before we go into break, I mentioned Love and him playing with Kevin Love, is there someone else that you're curious to see how he vibes with? Is there anyone in particular you want to see how LeVert plays with as he kind of gets going in Cleveland, which could be as soon as Wednesday?
I want to see how he vibes with Darius Garland. We don't know if Garland will be back Wednesday. But obviously you're making this trade with Darius in mind. Back issues notwithstanding, you and I have been kind of banging our fists on the desk for a while now, saying that the Cavs need to get some type of secondary creation, some type of just secondary offensive threat in the backcourt, just to kind of mitigate some of the pressure that defenses will throw at Garland, especially in the playoffs. I feel like Caris LeVert is that guy. I am curious. That's why I gave it a B- because I'm curious how the fit's going to work, because sometimes like a lot of his scoring is ineffective and inefficient, but he does provide rim pressure. He does provide tertiary playmaking. He plays defense. He's a bigger player that the Cavs could realistically play as a 2 or a 3, but he's a 3 as his natural position. They could play 4 if they wanted to go small as well. Like there's a lot of interesting wrinkles JB Bickerstaff could do with this. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and just watch how this all unfolds and not be too cynical about it. So like I could upgrade this to like a B+, A- if it like really works out. But like you said, I think people like hand wringing about his contract extension being in the ether, and then like Colin Sexton's future as well. That's down the line. Let's just focus on now, because Caris LeVert could just not fit either, and then we actually have to have that conversation too.
Yeah, I would be surprised if that happened to some degree, but we obviously just kind of need to see it. All right, after the break, we're going to talk more about this. We'll talk specifically about the starting lineup and picking between Okoro and Lauri Markkanen for that starting spot. We assume LeVert's going to start, but first, going to tell everyone about our friends at Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the market. And look, it's new time through New Year's resolutions. That means eating some healthy snacks. Built Bar has great protein bars and so many great flavors that include cookies and cream, coconut almond. They had a white chocolate cookies and cream that looked pretty good, mint brownie, salted caramel. There's a ton of them, and most of them contain 130 calories, just 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Right now, you can go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Use that promo code every time. When you get them now, get them later. Save that promo code that's LOCK15, and we thank them for sponsoring the show. Evan, so starting lineup, if you were going to have to pick today, say, okay, I think this person should start alongside, let's just assume it's Garland, LeVert. We'll leave the 3 spot open for now. Mobley and Allen. There's that 1 spot open. And Markkanen is unhealthy right now, which means I would assume that Okoro is the starter there, at least at first. I think that's probably a fair assumption. Unless like he decides that they need to do Jetty because of the shooting, but like that seems unlikely to me. Which would you prefer of Markkanen and Okoro as the starter next to Caris LeVert?
Could I give a hotter take? I think Caris LeVert should just come off the bench to start.
Okay,
hit me with it. I think you need to have, because the way JB Bickerstaff operates, he's very much of a prove me coach. I think Isaac Okoro, like you said, has played really well. I talked about this on Locked on NBA for today's show. Isaac Okoro obviously isn't going to like blow your mind offensively on a night-to-night basis. Like he's going to have good night shooting and slashing, but like you put him out there for the defense, and you put him out there to defend the best wing player on the opposing team. And obviously Darius is penciled in. I think JB Bickerstaff is so hell-bent and determined to stick with that 3 big lineup because they've run over 50 games with it. Yes, they've changed it to this point. They're playing Jetty at the 3 right now, just in place of Dean Wade, which is just a good development to show that the Cavs can show a little bit of flexibility and they're not too rigid about how they want to play their depth chart and rotations. But I think Bickerstaff very much operates like, okay, Caris LeVert, you need to prove to me why you need to leapfrog either Isaac Okoro or at this time until Markkanen is available, Jetty Osman or Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen comes back in the starting lineup for me to shuffle up the rotation and to have this player come off the bench, because that's a hard conversation. These guys have been here for 50 plus games. Granted, Markkanen's been out, but like Okoro's been here for a while. He's played really freaking well. And like you said, like he could solidify his case in the starting lineup, much like how like Lamar Stevens solidified his case in the rotation. But I think that's a tough conversation you have to have. But just the way I think Bickerstaff operates, like he's very coy with his lineups, obviously, but he makes players earn their spots. And I think that added motivation for LeVert could help. And also, maybe it helps ease him in and acclimates into the lineup and rotation because Bickerstaff also said he's not playing Rondo heavy minutes, one, because of the hamstring injury, and two, because he's not familiar with everyone. And they only have so many practices to go around during the season. I think the luxury of the All-Star break adds some extra familiarity that these guys could have with one another. I think the added familiarity of Jared Allen helps a lot too. But I think for now, I'd stick with Garland, Okoro, Markkanen, Mobley, Allen, with LeVert having the opportunity to leapfrog Okoro as a starting two.
I think I would just start him right away because I think one of the things you're going to have to do these next couple of weeks is really you want at least some chemistry between him and Darius. You need them to play together. You need them to figure stuff out. And I think the easiest way to do that is, okay, we're going to play, let's say, LeVert the first 4 to 5 minutes of the game. He's our first sub, and then one of these guys comes in, and then Darius gets runs the reins. When it's time for Darius to get his rest, Caris comes back in. He runs a bench unit, and you kind of organize things with those two guys being split, but then you bring them back together. Because like I would be shocked, Evan, if we look at this and we say, okay, the Cavs like much less of the starters. I think the closing lineup is going to be Caris LeVert is on there because you want another ball handler. It is very clear that the Cavs at the end of games have really struggled, post Rubio in particular, but like they have struggled to just kind of put together functional offense at times when it's just been Darius Garland having to create. LeVert is a solution to that, and I think that does take chemistry with Garland. I think that does take time for them to get familiar with each other on the court. I think to Garland's credit, he is an incredibly malleable guard. I think he's a guy that can play off ball. He's a guy that is willing to do other stuff. I think this will help him, kind of coming off some screens. I think that there's some different ways you can deploy him that will be interesting to see and potentially set up LeVert for some kind of just easy passing decision and the like. I would expect still, like, the one thing I would expect is just considering LeVert's injury history, and, he's played 39 games this year, missed a little bit of time, and, obviously the cancer scare, which you don't really want to hold against him, but does have other injury concerns in the past. I would wonder if you kind of control his minutes to like a little under 30. You keep playing Okoro 25-30, like Markkanen comes back, you kind of keep that longer rotation. And we see, I think if I'm picking one of the two between him and to go back to the original question, for me at least, I would say I think Markkanen is a cleaner fit just for two reasons. Number one, I think shooting will matter. LeVert is not going to space. You need like at least one other shooter on the floor. And like if you go Okoro, as much as I think he's been really good, he stands in the corner on offense a lot. There's a little bit of cutting, but it's just kind of one note. Markkanen is going to space. He's going to, you can run him off some simple actions and have him curl around some screens to get looks at the rim. Like, and I also think defensive continuity will be simple. The LeVert is not going to be a plus defender either. He's definitely going to be a fit, a very kind of niche here. But if you look at Markkanen, you can bring him back. You can keep your coverages pretty much the same. And, they stay pretty similar anyway, but keep that starting lineup kind of looks the same. You change it up at the end of games. And if you want to play Okoro, then to be a point of attack guy instead of Markkanen, or depending on who's playing better on a given night. But I think Markkanen shooting and then keeping that defensive coverage pretty simple to start with LeVert, and kind of have him kind of adjust to the system and also adjust to an offensive system that is going to be very different than what Rick Carlisle ran. I don't think what the Cavs run is, what he ran in Brooklyn with Kenny Atkinson. This is going to be a feeling out process. So I think I think you start him, and I think you start Markkanen just for the spacing purposes.
I absolutely agree with that. I think in terms of like a closing lineup, I've been thinking about this a bit. I would probably close with Garland, LeVert, Mobley, Allen for sure, and then you can fluidly flip between Okoro or Rondo or even Larry Markkanen as well, because Carter Rodriguez pointed this out earlier this morning that Darius Garland runs 8.2 pick and rolls per game. Rondo is at 3.5 per game. Caris LeVert runs 7.8 pick and rolls per game, scores in the 81st percentile out of those spots. Like, I think that's a good way to get him familiarity with his teammates as well. And I think adding lob threats like Rondo has mentioned, and Mobley and Allen, and also a pop partner in Markkanen helps a lot too. I think it can unlock a dimension in this offense. And I agree, like, you have to close with Garland and LeVert. And I think Mobley and Allen are the staple. And then it's just like you either play the hot hand, or maybe for certain situations, whether it's defense or offense, you throw in Okoro, Markkanen, or even Rondo if you need a third ball handler out there, if you just want to go a little bit more of a traditional lineup.
Yeah. Evan, the other thing I want to know before we go into break is I do think that if there's someone that could be squeezed, Rondo LeVert does not strike me as like a particularly like playable pairing.
That's shooting now.
The shooting is going to be really tough. The defense, frankly, is tough for from what Rondo is as a defender right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I am curious to see like how JB will handle Brandon Goodwin minutes in theory. Certainly, I think if you're building towards a playoffs situation, like Goodwin on a 2-way deal is not eligible to play in the playoffs unless he ends up on the 15-man roster at some point. So like there are some long-term things you're gonna kind of watch as we monitor. But I will be watching the Rondo minutes just to see how that looks, and we'll keep
I think
tabs
he
on
needs
that.
to stay at a cool 20 because JB was asked about him closing last night, and JB's like, he's not really that comfortable yet with the team. But JB kind of said, like, I would like him to play more minutes. And I'm just like, dear God, please no.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
if the Cavs, let's just throw this hypothetical out the window. The Cavs still have, today's Monday, so they have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 days till the trade deadline. At 3 p.m. Eastern, they could always go get another backup point guard. I listed a few options with the McGee exception. Maybe we could talk about that after we kind of.
well, we should talk about we're going to talk about the actual basketball after that. I think there's a lot to get into there.
Oh, for sure. Maybe we'll save that for Tuesday's episode. So we'll talk about that.
All right. Evan, you have an ad read though, so why don't you do that?
I absolutely do. Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs to the Super Bowl, with the Bengals and the former Cleveland Rams taking on each other this Sunday. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Do not wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts, and the exclusive betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Okay, Evan, I looked up some of the Rondo Garland minutes so far before we get into last night's game. 82 possessions with those two on the floor together so far, plus 6.1 per 100 possessions. But these lineups like vary wildly. I'm not taking much away from them. My gut tells me I don't think they're good, but the data so far would tell you like very good on defense and pretty atrocious on offense. But here we are.
Sorry, Tom Thibodeau just had a quote. Because
the computers thing
are part of the NBA. It's the heat of the moment. It just made me think of you and how JB Bickerstaff is like blaming the technocrats taking over the league.
I mean, look, man, it's just we're all just slaves to the technology out here. Just it's all computers' fault,
We're all the metaverse is coming for all of us.
But, you first, buddy. They're cutting your checks, so you're getting absorbed into the hive mind first.
That's fine, but tell me
last
about
night's
Rondo Garland.
Say that again. No, I have nothing else to say about that. I don't think those lineups are particularly. Rondo stuff does not interest me in a meaningful way, but like he obviously played well on Sunday, so like,
I watched
maybe
him
I'm an
play.
idiot.
And it's clear the Cavs just need to kind of get a younger option at the backup point. I think Rondo's a good presence to have. Is like a much better break glass in case of emergency, like a la Kevin Pangos. You can play him like end of the rotation minutes, maybe over Stevens or Dean Wade at that point. But you need to get somebody a little more durable, I think, just because I worry he has so much mileage on his body and he's so old. And I know he told Spencer Davies he's in perfect shape and has like, sick flex, bro, at like 2% body fat, but can't relate. But it's funny. Cavs Pacers is fun though.
Yeah, I think if there's an archetype for Cavs backup point guard now and later, it's like there's two ways you could go. It is sort of score first, in that kind of energy and kind of double down on some of the LeVert stuff, or it is like, can you find the next Alex Caruso very cheaply? I think those are sort of
that's a hard find. I think
that's what I think both of those are hard finds, but I think like that's the kind of archetype you're looking for. Like I'm not saying like you're not going to get Alex Caruso, but if you can get like that archetype, it's the Derek White Caruso archetype where it's like you handle the ball a little bit, you defend, you play really good defense, and you shoot threes. Like that's I think probably the kind of guard you're looking for. This is the guard you're looking for. Evan, Cavs Pacers though was bonkers because they looked atrocious in the first quarter, like utterly atrocious.
They look so flat.
And then come out in the fourth quarter with Jetty Osman and Kevin Love absolutely going off.
In your notes, you said they went fucking nuclear or exploded. So
I did. They were just outrageous. outscored the Pacers 37-17 in the third quarter. They win by 13, 98-85. Love and Osman are the stars here. And the Cavs just need these guys. And like, this was a game that I think if we look at the big picture, if they had lost this game, no Garland, obviously, but, no Sabonis, no Brogdon. And then
Sabonis is in the game. No Turner.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Sabonis. This is
silly goose.
Yeah.
I started him in fantasy last night. That little guy made me lose.
Yeah, well, nine points for Sabonis. Not his best game, but obviously the no LeVert because the trade happens breaks right after the JB Bickerstaff media availability, which is very slick. But this is like a game you should win. Like this is just a game you kind of got to check off your box, win at home. Kind of lucky they did it, but they can thank Kevin Love and Jetty Osmond for doing what they did in the fourth quarter.
I mean, you're never going to get that kind of production on a night-to-night basis from Kevin and Jetty. I just think they were both hot. It was fun to see. I think Rondo really. I arguably think this was Rajon Rondo's best game as Cleveland Cavalier.
It's not arguable. It's very clear that this was his best game.
I mean, 5 of 10 from the floor, 1 of 4 from 3. A lot of those shots were kind of in garbage possessions at times, but like when he was on, he was really freaking good. He finished the night with 15 points, 12 assists, 5 boards, 2 steals, like a little bit of everything. That's what you want, especially considering like Brandon Goodwin was pretty non-factor himself. He only played 16 minutes this night. So, I mean, you take what you can get. If Brandon Goodwin isn't on, that's when you lean more on Rajon Rondo a little bit. But that was a fun lineup. It was a fun rotation. I think JB Bickerstaff did the right thing, riding the hot hand and not like subbing guys out too much. And this was just an effective win for the Cavs. Like it was really enjoyable. It was really dreadful after the first quarter. Like you said, like my brain was like flatlining in the press box. And then just it started popping. It's just there's something about this team, man. Like they say they like to win ugly. I liked what Kevin Love said, where they try to play without fear because they have so much faith in one another. A lot of like buzzwords and stuff, but like they're playing confident. They're playing sure of themselves. Like this is a good team. This is probably the most fun I've had watching the Cavs in a while, and they are a game and a half out, I want to say, at first in the Eastern Conference, which is absolutely bonkers to think about. Like they won't catch the heat before the All-Star break. The NBA announced Sunday that Eric Spoelstra will be coaching Team Durant. It won't be JB Bickerstaff. So like obviously can't get into that consideration time for All-Star, but it's bonkers to think that the Cavs could be in the thick of it. And this LeVert trade could be a power move that kind of pushes them back over the edge so this offense doesn't look so dreadful at times without Garland.
Yeah, here's just the stats on the Osman, Rondo, Love trio. They all played 10-23 of the fourth quarter. They combined 12 of 14 from the field. Osman was 4 of 5 from 3. Love was 3 of 4. Rondo was 1 of 1. Osman had 18 points in the quarter, the most points he's ever scored in the quarter. The last time a Cav did that was LeBron James, a certain guy named LeBron James a couple seasons back. Osman also Rondo had 7 assists in the quarter, like just dropping dimes kind of everywhere around. Osman had 2, Love had 3, including the behind the back one that was kind of like the cherry on top of the Sunday of this quarter. Like, on a night where everything else felt pedestrian. I mean, like Mobley was 3-9 from the field, didn't make a 3 or 4 from the line, only had 4 rebounds, 3 block shots, but like no steals, no nothing. Jared Allen had 15 and 17, but 5 of 12 from the field, not nearly as efficient as we've seen him. Like it was Love, Rondo, and Osman that just kind of showed up. And, again, like I think you're right to say that you cannot bank on that, but it's like, if LeVert can give you another version of that at the very least, like this team should function better. Again, like this is winning a game without Darius Garland for this Cavs team is like, frankly, like an accomplishment in its own right.
Yeah, it's I had low expectations, especially when they said Garland was out again. I'm just like, this is going to be a pretty ugly one, especially just after the first quarter. I'm like, oh well, just move on to Wednesday against San Antonio.
As Evan knows, I ended up buying a couch.
Chris the Builder, Chris the Carpenter, if you will.
No,
he didn't buy a couch. He went out into the woods. His wife told me he chopped down some trees, carved it, and shaped it into the frame. He tanned some leather from the family cow.
I don't have a family cow. I just engage in some good old fashioned capitalism and bought a couch and was
Yes, comrade.
was figuring out this stuff as this is happening is like, and then my father-in-law and my brother-in-law are like helping me like put it in the house. It was just like a fun. Sometimes this stuff just happens in weird times and you just are like going on the fly and it's just like, yeah, this is all very bizarre. Evan, is this the best? Like this, I don't want to say like this is like the best, just because I think it's hard to kind of qualify that stuff. Is this the most confident you've been in what Osman provides, like since Rubio went down?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay,
His numbers have really been just inconsistent. I mean, granted, he had COVID when Rubio went down, but even when he came back, you could tell like the lack of Ricky Rubio on the floor was tough. You could tell with Kevin Love at times too. But maybe as Rondo kind of finds that comfort and familiarity, like he made a concerted effort to shout out Jetty and Kevin and Dean Wade and guys who he plays with off the bench more often than not, to say like he's building a lot of familiarity and rapport with them. I want to say this was his best. Yeah, obviously this is his best game without Rubio, but hopefully it's a sign of things to come, especially with the LeVert factor. I think a little bit of that extra playmaking. If Garland comes back too, like I think Jetty's going to start hopefully cooking a little bit more. And but the Cavs have a interesting situation on their hands in terms of just shooting and scoring off the bench.
the other thing I would just say is people. I know people are like,
slipped up like that.
I mean, no, we're all cruising. The other thing that I would just note is that people are like looking at Jetty being a go. He's like his first half was really bad. He was really inconsistent, which is true. The thing I will note is that like with role players, it is not like people can never do not expect like Darius Garland is pretty level. Jared Allen is, you're muted, buddy.
Oh, don't expect consistency from a role player.
Yeah, like Allen is going to be pretty level, right? Like you have these couple guys on this team that are going to set your standard. Osman's going to be a little more up and down. He's going to be a little more like the big thing in front of a car dealership that's like waving its arms around. You know, I don't know what the technical name for that is, but he's that guy, right? Like he's just flailing around. This is a guy who is going to go up and down, but he has these really high highs and has a skill set I think the Cavs do kind of need. So it's been a really, really big bounce back year for Jetty Osman. I think this is one of those reminders that it's been pretty good for him. Evan, let's wrap up here.
It's a tube man or a sky dancer or an air dancer, originally called the Tall Boy. Originated in Trinidad and Tobago, of all places, interestingly enough.
We need
1996 Summer Olympics. Wow, what an interesting story.
Yeah, we need better. That needs a better name. But anyway, that's going to be it for this episode of Locked On Cavs. Thanks for joining us. We'll do another one of these live soon. We'll take some questions on that one. Thanks everyone who was sending stuff in the chat. But
sorry, we had a lot to talk about. But yeah, good talking points for us to talk about later this week. I've been taking mental notes on some of the discussions.
I've been taking actual notes. We'll be back on Tuesday, and then they play Wednesday on Evan's birthday. And there's a lot more to talk about. We'll talk more about LeVert, I think, on Tuesday. And sure, I think we'll do a little bit of Rubio looking back as well, because there's a lot we can dive into with one Richard Rubio.
Caris LeVert, I asked the Cavs. He will be introduced to the Cavs, or to the media, I should say, as a Cavalier tomorrow. So maybe we'll give some reacts to that as well.
Doesn't have a jersey yet, and Evan, because he just tries to stir the pot, sent out a Larry Nance LeBron tweet, and frankly,
hey man, they gave up Kyrie's number to Colin Sexton.
Nothing little different.
And Mr. Jersey retirements are stupid over here is getting on a soapbox now.
Yeah, but I'm saying in the world where they exist, I don't know if they're like giving up LeBron's number for Caris LeVert, or if like they gave Larry Nance his number.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be 45 because that's his brother's number, because he's not going to take 32 from Dean Wade, I don't think.
Should wear 6. No, Pankos has 6.
Yeah, LeVert will wear number 3 for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Stole Ricky Rubio's old number.
Oh boy. Tweet us at Locked On Cavs your favorite jersey number choice for Caris LeVert, Pickerington, Ohio's own Caris LeVert. Until then, I'm Chris. He's Evan. Everyone, be well. Have a great rest of your Monday.